Jesus recorded for us in the Bible. It's Luke chapter 12, beginning at verse 16. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I'll store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. It's just a reminder that we can't take our wealth with us when we die. And it's a reminder not just to think about ourselves in this life, but to think about God and others as well. So let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for this short story. Help us to remember that life is short and to make the most of it. Help us to live life well, thinking about you and others as well as ourselves. We pray now for this meeting. We pray that you would give each of us the wisdom that we need. Please, would you be pleased to bless this meeting with clear thinking, wise decisions, and unity in purpose. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. And the prayer for this week in the Church of England calendar. O God, you know us to be set in the midst of so many and great dangers, that by reason of the frailty of our nature, we cannot always stand upright. Grant to us such strength and protection as may support us in all dangers and carry us through all temptations, through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Well, thank you all very much. Please do be seated.
Good evening, members. Right, item 1, report for the returning officer of the District Council by-election at Bentleys and Freighting Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to report the declaration of the result of poll for the Bentleys and Freighting Ward. The result of the by-election for the Bentleys and Freighting Ward, the district, that was held on the 6th of February 2025, and Amy Louise Kettiker was elected as a councillor for the Bentleys and Freighting Ward for Tendring District Council. She has made her statutory declaration and has the code of conduct, so therefore she is now formally a councillor.
Welcome. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Ferguson.
Okay. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Councillor.
Sorry. Councillor Platt.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Platt is stuck on the A12.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, I think Carrie Dormo may be stuck in the same traffic jam.
Okay. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting of the Council, pages 5 to 16.
Chairman, I'm happy to move them.
All agreed? Item 4, declaration of interest. These next.
Thank you, Chairman, members. As is the usual annual event, I will read out, for the purposes of the recording and the minutes, and for those watching, the advice that I provided to all members on the 5th of February this year. As Cabinet has referred the budget to this meeting of Council, it is timely to issue the annual guidance from the Monitoring Officer and the Section 151 Officer on a number of matters relating to interests and voting on the annual budget and setting of council tax. Tendering District Council adopted the LGA Model Code of Conduct, which does not include provisions confirming members do not have a declarable interest, which relates to the function of setting council tax under the Local Government Act 1992. Therefore, to enable you to debate and vote on the budget item to set the council tax, my email provided all district councillors with a dispensation under section 33 2A to little e of the Localism Act 2011. And as promised, I am referring to this at the meeting. Consequently, you will not be required to declare an interest based on the fact that you live in the district and therefore have to pay council tax. However, members are importantly reminded of section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, which provides that any member who is in arrears by at least 2 months with their council tax payments cannot vote on matters concerning either the level of or administration of council tax. It is important to note that this covers council tax liabilities outside of the district and property which may not be your main residence. If present at a meeting, a member to whom this provision applies must disclose the fact and may speak on the item, but cannot vote. Non-compliance with this section is a criminal offence. Therefore, should this provision apply to any member, this should be declared at the Declarations of Interest agenda item. In addition, in 2014, the government passed the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Amendment Regulations, making it mandatory for all councils to include within their standing orders provisions requiring recorded votes at budget meetings. This is within our constitution at the Council Procedure Rules, Rule 19.5. Therefore, a recorded vote is mandatory on any decision to the budget or council tax. Not only includes substantive budget motions, but also amendments. For any other types of interest which need to be considered, whether they are disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, or non-registrable interests, as defined within the Code of Conduct, these have been or should have been registered in advance, and with the exception of the council tax exemption for residing in a district, you should still consider if any other interests apply. Blanket exemptions and dispensations has not been applied for anything else.
Item 5, announcements. Councillor Paul Hannigan, sorry.
I wish to declare a non-registrable interest in the fact that I have a relative that is a user of Careline. Having considered the matter and as it affects a number of residents across the district, which means I have sought advice from the monitoring officer and feel that I am able to speak on this subject. So thank you, Chairman, and I think Councillor Sue Honeywood will probably make the same declaration.
Councillor Jeff Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll declare an interest in item 10 because I am a tenant of the District Council. I don't feel it's appropriate for me to take part in that particular issue, and therefore I will withdraw. Thank you, Chairman.
Item 5, announcements by the Chairman. At this meeting there's none. They will be included in my March statement. Thank you. Item 6, announcements by the Chief Executive, Ian Davison.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two announcements. The first announcement is in relation to the change in membership of the Reform UK Group. Mr. Chairman, I formally report that following the meeting of the Council held on 21st of January 2025 and pursuant to Regulation 9b of the Local Government Committees and Political Groups, Regulations 1990, Councillor Mike Bush served formal notice on the Council that he wished to be treated as a member of the Reform UK Political Group. That notice has been duly countersigned by the leader of the Reform UK Group, Councillor Jeff Bray. Councillor Ketika has also formally report that following the by-election in the Bentleys and Freighting ward on the 6th of February, and pursuant to Regulation 9b of the Local Government Committees and Political Groups Regulations in 1990, Councillor Amy Ketika served formal notice on the Council that she wished to be treated as a member of the Reform UK Political Group. That notice has been duly countersigned by the leader of the Reform Group, Councillor Bray. Members will be aware that under Section 15(1) e of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 and Regulation 17(c) of the Local Government Committees and Political Groups Regulations 1990, a review of the allocation of seats to political groups will be carried out, the results of which that will be reported to Council on 25th of March 2025. And as always, Mr. Ford looks forward to doing those for us. These announcements are for information only. My second announcement refers back to the report which I did to Council at the previous meeting, which to say is that the Greater Essex has now been accepted on the programme for the priority programme for devolution and local government reorganisation, LGR. The information which we have so far is an interim plan will be submitted. It's to be submitted to government on or before the 21st of March 2025. As far as we know, that submission will be an outline. It will not be the detail. The detail will then be required to be submitted on or before the 26th of September. It is also, as part of the announcement, the postponement of local elections from 2025 to 2026, and also the likely election of the mayor of the Strategic Authority is likely to be in May 2026. Just for members' information, at the all-member briefing which is coming up, I will be giving you further details and an opportunity to ask me any further questions. But this is a formal announcement so that our towns and parish councils and all those who are watching with avid interest to our meetings are formally notified. And just to say, as we will be making contact with the town councils, as already discussed, to update them and give them information, as we will with TDALC, in order that if they wish to have also a briefing about LGR, we will also be giving TDALC the same opportunity. Thank you, Chairman.
Item 7, statements by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I have none tonight.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of in this chamber will be aware that the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for Essex announced recently that due to budgetary pressures and an announced shortfall of £5.3 million that he was proposing to cut the police community support officer posts across the county. The police have been effective at reducing crime across Essex, and the PCSOs have been integral to that ongoing reduction. At the Cabinet meeting held on the 31st of January, it was suggested that the Council write to the Commissioner of our concern of the loss of our PCSOs and how important they are in keeping our community safe. Later that day, the Government announced £100 million of extra funding for policing nationally, and Essex Police's share of this funding is £2.3 million. Subsequently, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for Essex has said that this extra funding, along with other measures, will help bridge the shortfall. A new budget has been put in place which is designed to retain PCSOs in Essex. I invite members to note that the £5.66 precept increases, which equates to £13.95 per year, put forward by the PFCC, and this, along with the extra funding from the Government, means that PCSOs across Essex and importantly in Tendring will be retained alongside maintaining other provision. The use of National Policing Guarantee funding still needs to be approved by the Home Office, and there is some confidence that the requirements attached to this funding will be met. Pay constitutes 81% of the police budget, and there are some cuts proposed to staffing of non-critical roles and also to allowances. However, there will be no backfilling by frontline officers to cover any of those vacancies which may occur. Members will, no doubt, support the proposal to retain the PCSOs in Tendring, who play a crucial role engaging with residents and the public, undertaking reassurance patrols and vulnerability visits. Their support at community events helps the smooth running of activities in the district for the benefit of our population and our visitors. They are invaluable in supporting the Council's community ambassadors and anti-social behaviour news, and I hope members will accept that. Thank you, Chair.
Item 9.
No, Councillor Jean Scott.
That's your name.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies for being a few minutes late. And I welcome the news that the Cabinet member brings to this council. But is he aware of the influence that our Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner in Essex had on the government on actually bringing forward that decision that has secured our PCSOs across the county?
I understand he had some influence, but also there was a great influence by a number of Labour MPs who went and spoke to the Home Office and tried to get that additional funding as well.
Councillor Peter Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually attended a conference call with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and there were MPs across the whole of the Essex region. And I welcome the news that the PCSOs are going to be kept. And credit where credit's due. The Police and Crime Commissioner made a strong case for keeping the PCSOs, along did pretty much every MP and every representative that was on this call, including myself, who was there representing the Reform Party. So I think it was cross-party agreement that the PCSOs are a valuable force within our county, and I think it was a combined effort. So I wouldn't necessarily see it was one particular person or one group that actually can claim credit for this. I think it was a joint effort. Thank you.
Can you remind everybody there should be a question? Thank you. welcome Nick.
Good
Stay
evening,
seated.
Chairman. Thank you. Good to be here, despite the struggle to get here, or maybe because of it. Did I note in the comments from the portfolio holder that they are not replacing or looking to recruit replacement for PCSOs whose posts have fallen vacant?
What I did say, Chair, was that there are some cuts proposed to staffing of non-critical roles and also to allowances. However, there will be no backfilling by frontline officers to cover any vacancies which occur.
Come back.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Placey.
Oh, thank you. Mine's not a question. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you all. It's on? Yeah, it is on. It is on, Michael. In case you've not seen the Chief Exec's emails, that the 9th Tendra and Youth Awards are now open for nominations. These awards shine a spotlight on the amazing accomplishments of young individuals from the age 5 to 21 who live, study or work in the area, and also honour the adults who support them. The award categories are as diverse as the talents they celebrate, including Young Lifesaver, Community Improvement, Environmental Initiative, and the Unsung Hero Award for the adults who support young people. The categories recognise achievements in academics, inspirational caring, community work, environmental efforts, among others, and nominations can be for an individual or a group. Anyone can nominate that special person, so please spread the news. And all the details are on the website. And by the way, I'm going to ask if anybody's interested in volunteering. We're encouraging you to join the committee of the Tendra Youth Awards at its annual general meeting, which it will take place here on February the 25th. It's a Tuesday at 5:30. And this is an opportunity for people to learn more about the awards and get involved. So if you're interested, please come along. Thank you.
Item 9, report of the Cabinet A1 Executive Proposals, General Fund Budget of the Council Tax 25 to 26, pages 17 to 118. Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think everybody's got a copy of the speech, and hopefully they received it a couple of hours ago. So I'll launch straight into it, Chairman. And Chairman, members of the Council, I would like to start by acknowledging that whilst these budget speeches have historically been lengthy, I'll endeavour to keep mine brief this year, much to the relief of some of you, I am sure. This meeting, as always, is about the budget for the coming year, and my goal is to allow for more time for valuable discussion on one of the most important roles we, as a council, undertake, and that's our responsibility for financial stewardship. I am pleased to lead with some positive news. The budget presented tonight is not only balanced, but also includes a surplus. For the time being, this surplus will be directed into our forecast risk fund, ensuring a stable financial outlook for the years ahead. Our long-term financial planning provides us with both flexibility and security to respond to future challenges, whether these come in the form of cost pressures, structural deficits, or the delivery of our key priorities. This budget also offers the opportunity to reflect on some of the collective achievements. As many of you know, I have consistently emphasised my focus on getting the things done. This includes both continuing the important projects initiated by previous administrations and driving forward the administration's new initiatives. Some of the notable successes include Spendles, our flagship homeless centre that provides a much-needed roof over the heads of 30 homeless families and contributes over £200,000 worth of savings per year against our homelessness cost pressure. Honeycroft, a shelter scheme that has delivered under budget and on time. This allowed us to look after the more vulnerable residents in Tendring whilst freeing up 7 council houses for much more deserving families. Sunspot, a scheme in Jowitt's hands, a multi-million-pound award-winning project, now complete and is now fully covering its costs 2 years ahead of predictions. It should also be noted that in completing these projects swiftly, we have minimised the rising costs that invariably happen to projects between conception and delivery. That is not all that has been achieved this year, as there is a significant amount of projects that are progressing well, that are still in the pipeline to be delivered. These include Levelling Up Fund, the Carnarvon Terrace and Library and Clacton projects, the significant progress on the 15 projects within the Community Regeneration Partnership Programme, formerly known as the Levelling Up, which will make transformative investments in the district. The Capital Regeneration Project, which will see Milton Road, Kingsway, Victoria Street and the Harwich Library projects move forward. The necessary improvements to the Clacton Leisure Centre and investments in local assets, ensuring our facilities meet the growing needs of residents, and play zones in all the towns in the district. But stewardship isn't just about counting the money and delivering exciting projects. It's also about the confidence of how we spend and getting the very best value from it. And I'm pleased to get a few milestones tucked away this year, and I wanted to raise 2 tonight. The first is the developing and administering of a new social value policy, which will allow the way we spend our money to generate additional benefits for our communities. The second is the clearing of the backlog of the Council's external audits. For the first time in years, we have a complete, signed-off audit trail for the Council's finances. I'd like to thank our outstanding officers who have worked so hard with the many demands that have come from not just having the 3 outstanding audits, but also the current audit. It is a testament to them that our backlog has been cleared and our current audit is on the way to the Audit Committee as I speak. Our ability to secure external funding continues to be a key focus, and I'm proud to report success on this front as well. We have secured multiple strands of funding from the government regeneration programmes and beyond, including funding for improvements to our leisure centres from the Government Swimming Pool Fund, £500,000 of UK SPF money to support various initiatives district-wide on top of the £1 million in previous years, an additional £500,000 of green space funding for the High Street Accelerator bid in Dovercourt, which includes investment for open space landscape improvements. And this is in addition to £237,000 secured last year for improvements in Dovercourt. £40,000 to fund a structural survey on the Dovercourt leading lights, and £200,000 capacity funding for the long-term plan for towns, overseen by the Clacton Town Board. And to highlight how far our ambitions are, we're also pursuing a Salix funding bid for over £1 million towards a green energy solutions aimed at replacing our ageing boilers at Clacton Leisure Centre. In terms of our future financial management, we've been proactive. Notable actions this year include waste recycling and street cleaning contract preparations to provide flexibility as decisions are made later in the year. Investment in council assets to avoid ticking time bomb scenarios due to neglect. Setting aside £1 million for coastline management, which we hope will help to leverage additional external funding. Proactively managing cost pressures, such as the growing issue of homelessness, where we've allocated resources to manage the financial implications. And £1 million to fund a project delivery unit to give much needed capacity to deliver the many ongoing projects, and more yet may be needed if we are to complete all outstanding projects to meet the timelines set by local government review. Looking ahead to the proposed government fund budget for 25-26, we have made careful assumptions and managed risks to ensure a balanced budget. The saving plan will continue to be an important element in helping us continue to balance the budget in future years. Savings do not necessarily mean reductions in expenditure, as they can include increases in income, which is reflected within the current plan and will be something we will continue to explore going forward. One good example being the ongoing successful management of our investments. As reflected in the savings plan, income from our treasury management activities continue to deliver a significant level of funding that remains an important part of balancing our books, with the budget for 25-26 expecting invest income of over £1.8 million. Unlike other councils that have proposed saving plans that are ultimately undeliverable, as shown, the savings in our plan are achievable, many of which have already been secured. In terms of the overall net budget for 25-26, it is now in surplus, with a contribution being made to the forecast risk fund rather than a contribution from it, which was the case in earlier forecasts. This budget is supported by a 2.99% proposed increase in our share of the local council tax bill. And it's always good to take the opportunity to highlight that our share of the overall bills that will start to hit doormats in March totals just over £199 per year for a Band D property. This represents only 10% of the overall payable amount by households, and that is just 50p a day. I think this continues to provide excellent value for money, especially when you think of everything the council delivers each year. Part of stewardship is having one eye on the future and the challenges that may lie ahead. And for me, these come in three areas. The first is BAU, the business as usual, and these incorporate items such as the rise of inflation, the increase of the cost of living, which makes even more demand on council services, reduced interest rates, which will affect Treasury outcomes, and volatile energy costs. The second is the government equation. I welcome the continued commitment to our Levelling Up projects and announcements around UK SPF and right to buy receipts, alongside a commitment to a multi-year settlement, which will add stability to forecast predictions. We do, however, need to understand the significant impact from national insurance changes, along with the potential changes in and around business rates and the new homes bonus, which will impact our 26-27 financial position. Lastly, but by no means the least, is the government recent white paper on the local government devolution, having a significant impact on the future financial planning. We are actively considering this new landscape and preparing our savings plans with a focus on identifying efficiencies, protecting services, and managing cost pressures. The budget surplus for 25-26 also provides us with some flexibility, which could be crucial in supporting the capacity required for local government reorganisation, should that occur. However, despite these uncertainties, I am confident that the strong financial foundation we have built will enable us to navigate these challenges. This confidence is backed by the recent recognition from our external auditor, whose independent view, after a long delay, assures us of the effectiveness of our financial stewardship. Lastly, I wanted to highlight that we remain committed to supporting town and parish councils, and in 25-26 we will continue to provide grant funding to offset the cost of the local council tax support scheme, ensuring that the local councils remain financially stable and able to support our communities. To conclude, this budget represents a continued commitment to sound financial management, while also allowing us to deliver on our key priorities. By adopting this budget, we will maintain our momentum in managing resources effectively, protecting services and planning for the future. I am confident that with the steps we've taken, we're in a strong position to face the challenges ahead. Chairman, I present the budget for 25-26.
Councillor Paul Honeyman.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Leader, for your budget. I will keep my points really short. Firstly, I'd like to refer back to the Resources and Services Overview Scrutiny Committee of the 13th of January. At that point, Cabinet, or yourself as leader, said that we'd be relying on reserves, and it was pointed out by one of the council officers that these would be depleted by 28-29. Then late in January, the forecast deficit for 25-26 had fallen by 1.45 million to 56,000, and that was since the December Cabinet meeting. Obviously now we've received the updated forecast, for 25-26, which is revised to an overall net surplus, as you rightly say, and the rise to this net surplus has been explained in the latter part. So my point is, I believe that the Scrutiny Committee's view was justified, that it felt at the time there was not in a position to comment on the robustness of the budget plans for 25-26 and beyond. I still feel that's the case because of the fluctuations that have occurred through that period. So all I'm saying is, while I won't oppose the budget, I will be abstaining on the budget. The second point that I'd like to raise is around the concerns about the future of Careline. Now, I'm understanding that this is something that's coming up at Cabinet in the near future, and I remember the leader saying at a Cabinet meeting, when I asked whether it was a political or a financial decision, that they were looking at the possible closure of Careline. At that point, he didn't comment, or said he'd rather not comment. So my question there is, with this decision coming up and this having an effect on so many of our residents, what scrutiny is going to be put in place of the Cabinet's decision on the future of Careline, and which committee will that scrutiny be undertaken by? Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Peter Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the speech. It was quite thorough in what it expressed. But I'd like to make a couple of points. Firstly, it's an omission really to talk about the offices in Wheelie. On page 40 of the report, it shows that the Wheelie offices are costing £65,000 a year. So far, it's taken in excess of 3 years, so we're looking around £200,000 costs, and it's here for in the budget for another full year, so we're looking at £260,000. It is a council asset, which, you know, a decision was taken a number of years ago to actually dispose of the unit, and it's still sitting there, still costing the council money. We are, you know, tight for money, and we're looking at savings, and this has got to be one where the decision has to be made very quickly to come to a conclusion. I'm sure that a resolution of that can be found fairly soon. The leader also made mention of the significant impact of national insurance changes, and he is right to be concerned. I chaired a meeting of 120 businesses just a few weeks ago. 80% of those businesses raised their hand when I asked the question, are they concerned about national insurance and are they about to lose staff as a result of it? 80% said yes, they would lose, it ranged between 1 job and 30 jobs. These are local employees that are about to lose their jobs. That will have an effect on the local economy, but also it will have an effect on homelessness potentially as well. I sit on the Task and Finish group looking at that, and I asked the question, of the 100 cases of homelessness that the council is currently dealing with, how many of those are without jobs? And about 80% of them. There is a direct correlation between homelessness and joblessness. There is a storm appearing on the horizon because of the government decision to increase employee national insurance. So my question really to the leader is that, you know, are you aware of the implications of the national insurance increase, and have we the budget to cope with that? And one last thing about Wheelie, on page 22, 21, it makes reference to the best value statutory duty, having regard to a combination of economy, efficiency and effectiveness, i.e. delivering best value. And I just wonder whether we have reached that test in terms of Wheelie, or did we drop the ball? Thank you.
Councillor Mike Bush.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Leader, for your budget report. I believe very comprehensive. Having read that and had looked through the agenda tonight, I draw sort of concerns relating to the the waste and recycling contract, or forecast, should I say. We all know that the old age contract is due for renewal and that's to be procured at the end of year. This was a 7-year contract plus that's been extended. Now, when I look at those numbers in there, I noticed in that recycling and waste collection element, the costs or the forecast has gone down. We all recognise, and having been involved with it for some time, when I was in the portfolio and the cabinet, I see this as a major issue, because when I look at the bottom line of all the waste and recycling elements, it's a £32 increase on that forecast from previous. Now, when we look at what needs to be done or what needs to be serviced to this contract going forward, I feel we're exposed, and this is an underbaked budget. And for what point I want to really make, Leader, and if you can respond to me that, where's the resilience when these decisions are going to be made? As we know, we're in the midst of processing and procuring these contracts, and they're going to come, and it is soon. Where is the resilience? Where is the risk being built into the funds to meet this? And that's a thing I really wanted to raise. If we have no money in there or insufficient, does this mean cutting the waste services? So I do need a response, because this affects everybody in this district. And that's pretty much my questions. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jeff Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, my thanks to the Leader of the Council for the budget and a very good delivery of it. Much of it did make sense. Some of the things I wanted to pick up have already been picked up. Like the Leader of the Conservative Group, I share concerns about the fluctuations. We did move from minus 1.5 million into a surplus in a relatively short space of time. And I have to say, I've read it, I can see how it happened, but it's not incredibly clear, so it's quite difficult to understand how that came about. The couple of questions I've got to ask could be seen as really quite small, and they're really more about clarification than anything else. The first relates to the Citizens Advice tendering situation, which we recently helped out, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this chamber is pleased that we were able to do that. And I did ask at Cabinet, and I'd like a little confirmation now, if we're confident that the 6 months additional funding we gave would be sufficient to get us past the procurement period and therefore prevent a gap in the service becoming obvious. I think that it's quite important we know that. And also the other thing that concerns me, I did raise this before, is the procurement that we intend to undertake to find a new service, or indeed to keep the current service, will itself have a cost, and I'm not seeing any cost there. Additionally to that, of course, if we were to engage a different service, with the Citizens Advice tendering being very well known, their logo is instantly recognisable wherever you go, if they were replaced, there would obviously be a cost involved in promoting the new service, whatever that service is. And so I'd just like a little bit of clarification on that. The other one's slightly different. I tuned in, as I often do, to an overview and scrutiny meeting recently, where the matter of the PCSO for Harwich was brought up. And it did concern me a little bit that Harwich, unlike anywhere else, does have a PCSO funded by tendering, despite the fact, with the best will in the world, Harwich does have the ability to precept in the same way that all of the other parish and town councils do. So I know that my colleague asked the question of the partnerships portfolio at the time about this, and the partnerships portfolio indicated that it was possible for any parish or town council to apply for that same funding. Now, given that that potentially could be 27 parish or town councils, that would be a substantial amount of money. So could we just clarify that in order that you don't suddenly receive lots of applications that you really don't want? I just think clarification there would be useful. Thank you, Chairman. Grateful.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you. My concern
here is really around the contingencies that we have available, particularly around cost pressures of events, perhaps not of the making of this council, but in other areas. We are the collection authority for the council tax, and there seems to be a growing momentum out there at the moment of no representation means no taxation. And there seems to be a growing momentum around the idea that if we don't have elections, then perhaps we shouldn't pay our taxes. My concern here is very much that we as the collection authority could be affected very badly by the fact that large numbers of people might be withholding their council tax later this year because of the cancellation of democracy.
Councillor Mark Cousins.
Well, that was quick. Well, I'm going to be supportive of this budget because I think there's lots of it that is worth hanging on to, and I think probably one of the things I would actually like to pick up on is that the fact that we're going to try and secure external funding, and it continues to be a key focus of the current administration, and I would welcome that, because two of the questions I would have are you're talking about funding for improvements in our leisure centres from the government swimming pool fund. Can I ask, is that to be spent on swimming pools or onto the leisure centres generally? Because, I mean, you talk about not creating ticking time bomb situations. Well, sometimes Frinton and Walton swimming pool is described in that way. It's a ticking time bomb, and I would like to see that secured for the future. And you also mention £1 million to fund a project delivery unit. I think that's another thing that I think is very positive, because could that be used to help fund town and parish councils to respond to the opportunities that come along through LGR to create legacies for our residents in the future? So I am positive about parts of your budget, but I would like those questions answered.
Councillor Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. Quite a few questions there. So apologies if I missed anything, and I'm happy to be reminded if I haven't covered everything. So I'll start with Councillor Honeywood, who also made this, Councillor Bray made the same comments around our reserves and having a struggle with the bouncing of our funds. Well, I completely agree with you, because I used to have the very same problem when I was doing your role, that it would be doom and gloom for 3/4 of the year, and then at the very last minute we'd have all this money coming in. So I would hope that you would understand that the rates pools and the very late submission by the governments in the previous years, 20th of December being the latest one, means that we've never really been able to work out the actual final position until well into the beginning of January. And that's always been quite a considerable change. And as a previous portfolio holder, Councillor Guglielmi was often heard me saying, but why? Why was it doing that? I think I can get you a more comprehensive answer. It's not one I want to get into today, but I understand the reasons why you do it, but I don't think it's a reason to abstain. I think it's been around for a while. It's not just part of this administration. It's been around ever since I've been a councillor and been chairman of the scrutiny. As to who scrutinises Careline, I'm guessing that's down to one of the scrutiny committees. Yours as it's internal, probably. So perhaps Councillor Steady's as it's been external, or perhaps you could do one that's joint. I think that's for you to work out. It's not really for me to sit there and tell you how to do scrutiny. Unfortunately, I'd love to do that, but it's not a cabinet scrutiny position that would work for us. Councillor Harris, you talked about wheeling. Well, this was, as you said, a 3-year thing. How long have we been in administration? think you find we've been in administration 2 years. So this was a decision made before us, when actually you were part of the administration and part of the Conservatives at that point. So we tried to make that work. That has been something that was put in place and something that we tried to make work. And you're right, it hasn't worked, so we took the decision to review it, and that process is ongoing, and I'm hopefully going to get you some information on that. As for the national insurances, well, that's not actually in place yet. It starts April, so we don't know the outcomes. We can have a good guess where we might go with that. And yes, you're right, might be right. There might be some outcomes on that that we haven't seen. But I think it's one of those things that we just have to sit there and wait to see the proper outcomes and see whether there is things that we need to do, part of local government, part of national government, all those sort of things. Councillor Bush, you talked about the waste contract. I think you remember it's actually on the risk register for the council, the waste contract, and identified the risks in the speech that the waste contract is potentially a problem that we have to look at. But there are ongoing conversations being held with that. I don't think that we need to worry about putting reserves in to match risks at this precise moment in time. I think we need to wait to the outcome of those conversations and then understand exactly what liability this council will be facing for its waste contract. Councillor Bray, you talked about the citizen advice funding and the length of the funding. The length of funding doesn't state a length, it states that we will fill the gap. So the idea is that we will get it done in 6 months. If it takes longer than that, we will continue to fund the gap until we've done the procurement exercise around that. As for the PCSO, it's not fully funded by tendering, I'll start there. It's half funded by tendering, the other half being funded by the Harwich Town Council. But once again, I would like to point out, this was done by a previous administration, one which you sat on, and this is something that we've continued because the argument still stands. It's reviewed every year, as we said at scrutiny. That's what you were listening to. And I think every year, continuing, we will try to understand whether the PCSO is still a valued asset at one of our crime hotspots in Harwich. Councillor Everett, no elections, no tax. You're the first one I've heard that say. You know, so people withholding their council tax, that will be on individuals, and that won't be a reason to withhold council tax. Councillor Cousins, I was scribbling busy, so I don't think I caught all of yours, but swimming pool, we're trying to leave all 3 swimming pools in the best possible condition we can. It's not lost on us that when we form a new unitary, the fact that we have 3 swimming pools in this district, 4 if you include Brightlingsea, there is definitely some scope for closing some of them. And the idea being that we will try very hard to make those swimming pools as viable and as secure as possible. As for the £1 million delivery project, that is for delivering Levelling Up Partnerships, which has got a new name now, and the Levelling Up Fund. But also, it is to help us deliver all the projects that we've got ongoing, and that may boil down to some things with town councils. Hope I captured everything. Thank you, Chairman.
Going to the vote now.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to remind members that for the budget, it is a named vote, that is a statutory requirement. So I will read out your name. Please say whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Alexander.
Abstain.
Councillor Amos. Councillor Baker. Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Ben Sillum.
For.
Councillor Bray.
Abstain.
Councillor Bush.
Abstain.
Councillor Calver. Councillor Casey.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Codling.
Abstain.
Councillor Andrea Cousins.
For.
Councillor Mark Cousins.
For.
Councillor Davidson.
For.
Councillor Everett.
Abstain.
Councillor Fairley. Councillor Fowler.
For.
Councillor Goldman.
For.
Councillor Griffiths.
Abstain.
Councillor Guglielmi. Councillor Harris.
Abstain.
Councillor Ivan Henderson.
For.
Councillor Joe Henderson.
For.
Councillor Paul Honeywood.
Abstain.
Councillor Sue Honeywood. Councillor Kettiker. Councillor Cots.
For.
Councillor Land. Councillor Morrison.
4.
Councillor Newton.
4.
Councillor Oxley. Councillor Placey.
4.
Councillor Platt. Councillor Scott.
4.
Councillor Skeels. Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Steady.
4.
Councillor Gemma Stevenson.
4.
Councillor Mark Stevenson.
4.
Councillor Sudra.
4.
Councillor Talbot.
4.
Councillor Thompson.
Abstain.
Councillor Turner.
Still making mine up. I think I'll abstain on this one, Mr. Chief Executive.
Councillor White.
Thank you.
4.
And Councillor Wiggins.
4.
Thank you, members.
Thirty-three for, 13 abstentions, so it's passed. Thank you. Item 10, report of the Cabinet, A2 executive proposals, housing revenue, account budget, 25 to 26, pages 119 to 142. Councillor Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. And hopefully this will be a little bit shorter than the previous one. Before I talk about the proposed budget for 25-26, it might be worth setting the scene in terms of the underlying principle that both my administration and the previous administration have applied to the Council's important social housing landlord role. And that is that we want to make sure that as much of the rents we collect from our tenants is invested back into their homes and associated services. This continues to remain a fundamental premise of what good social landlords should do, regardless of the social housing regulations that might require it. Good quality housing goes hand in hand with the quality of life of our tenants. Effective management of our tenants' homes and the support we provide them are further cornerstones of our important landlord role, and we will be judged against by both our tenants and the regulator. As I mentioned last year, the Council instigated its own peer review of our housing provision along with identifying additional capacity to support the work associated with this and the new era of social regulation. The outcome of the review was considered by our Audit Committee in April last year, where they heard how it has been a positive step in understanding the current policy and practice within the service and where further work was needed. Set against the outcome of this review above, and our key priority of providing decent housing that everyone deserves, 2024-25 has been a busy year, which has seen the initial outcomes from the stock condition surveys, resulting in timely repairs and a refocusing of the housing investment programme to include energy efficiency and anti-condensation measures. The recruitment of 4 tenant engagement officers, providing valuable services through the tenant engagement, which includes general advice, debt management, and maximising opportunities to access additional financial support. It is our aim that we visit all of our tenants on a regular basis via this additional resource. There's also been the introduction of a number of policies such as a tenant involvement policy, an antisocial behaviour policy, a reasonable adjustment policy, a vulnerability policy, an acceptable customer behaviour policy, a housing neighbourhood management policy, a housing rent setting and collection policy, a housing allocation policy for consultation, a gas safety policy, an electricity safety policy, a fencing and paving policy, an empty homes management policy, and we also considered our last cabinet a housing asset management plan, which covers a number of important elements, including the management of our empty properties. I think this ably demonstrates how serious we take our landlord role and how we are always striving to improve what we do. We may not always get things right, but we are never afraid to hear what our tenants or the regulator have to say. We can then be judged on how we respond. As set out in the report, and similar to the General Fund, there are challenging times ahead, and there will always be trade-offs in terms of balancing our aims and aspirations with the depth of our pockets. We acknowledge that the proposed use of reserves in 25-26 and beyond is not a sustainable long-term solution. But in the more immediate items, it strikes a necessary balance of protecting the investment in tenants' homes and enables the Council to meet its key priorities and regulatory responsibilities. As part of our active management of the business plan, we will need to continue to keep a watching brief on potential cost pressures and other liabilities. As recognised within the report we have in front of us tonight, along with earlier reports, the cost of undertaking the required level of maintenance to our tenants' homes continues to rise due to inflationary pressures. We are also required to meet a set of tenant satisfaction measures and are subject to an enhanced programme of regulation from the Regulator for Social Housing. Such a challenging background to our financial planning process will naturally limit options to rationalise resources across the various lines of the forecast. However, we need to be up to the challenge of seeking efficiencies and exploring the prioritisation of resources without compromising our underlying principles or our ability to meet regulatory requirements. As discussed at the recent Resource and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, a good example relates to properties that may be becoming costly to maintain and repair and use up a disproportionate amount of HRA resources. It may therefore be better to dispose of such properties in order that resources can be focused elsewhere within the HRA. That highlights another balance that we have to make. If we dispose of properties, we then need to explore opportunities to replace them. As summarised in the report, the government have introduced a number of helpful flexibilities around the use of right to buy receipts that should support us in this endeavour. However, as we have said before, adding homes to our existing stock of houses does not have to come from us directly. We have seen a number of homes given to the Council as part of our planning obligations, and hopefully you have seen the recent press release relating to the 8 new homes handed to us by Matthew Homes, relating to their site in Meadow Gardens in Clacton, with 10 more to come in the near future. In terms of rental income, which clearly plays an important part in the stability and financial sustainability of the HRA, we are proposing a rent increase of 2.7 in 25-26, in addition to taking the necessary and effective action to continue to bring the level of void losses down to match those levels achieved before COVID. All the things I have talked about tonight have been drawn together with our initial highlight priorities for 25-26, where we have set out commitment to developing the long-term HRA 30-year business plan proposals to secure sustainability of the HRA, which will include the management of long-term empty council properties and responding to the government's drive to increase the stock of social housing. Councillor Baker and I will be undertaking a deep dive into the numerous lines of the business plan, which will not only focus on managing our more difficult properties effectively, which includes any of the long-term empty homes, but also using data well to drive change and efficiency. In terms of reserves, the estimated use of balances in 25-26 is just over £1 million. This has been partly offset by the estimated surplus in 24-25 and the money that was transferred to reserves within the outturn position for 23-24 was finalised last year. It is important to highlight that the money proposed to be drawn from reserves is invested back into our tenants' homes. As I mentioned last year, we remain a good landlord, and I hope tenants see their future as having their homes owned and managed by us rather than an alternative that we've seen elsewhere in the country where councils have sold off their housing stock. That brings me to the point I referred to when I introduced the general fund budget earlier tonight, and that is the impact from local government devolution and reorganisation. Ultimately, our future is not necessarily in our hands in terms of LGR, but as we discussed at our full council meeting last month, work will continue to ensure that the district of Tendring is in the best possible position and that members and officers will continue to deliver this council's best value and other statutory duties for the benefit of its residents, businesses and communities every day that it exists, which will be applied to the HRA and our responsibilities as a social housing landlord. The budget we are considering tonight, therefore, continues to provide a sound basis for us to meet the various challenges I have outlined, along with continuing to deliver a well-managed and financially sustainable housing revenue account on behalf of our tenants. Chairman, I present the budget.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. I've only the one. I think it was approximately a year ago, if I recall correctly, it was in this chamber. I asked the question about the housing strategy and the fact that the housing strategy didn't tie up with the budget. At that point, I was assured that I believe it was later this year, which was obviously last year, that would be brought forward and looked at. Could he update us where we are with the housing strategy? It'd be really helpful. Thank you, Chairman.
Candidate Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to come back to the same point that I made previously, actually. The points that the leader has made with regards to the cost pressures and liabilities, particularly when undertaking the level of maintenance to tenants' homes, continue to rise. Officers have told me that the cost of the national insurance, the employees' national insurance, is having a significant effect on this. And in fact, a figure of 400,000 increase from subcontractors has been mentioned. The leader could confirm whether that is a correct figure or not. But as I said before, dark clouds are gathering. Jobs change people's lives, and so does redundancy. And I think that is definitely a real issue that I hope that the council is going to take on board. The other concerning thing with regards to this matter as well is that the housing team itself are said to be under-resourced, and that may be having an effect on placing families into housing as well. So are there budgetary restraints in terms of heads within the actual department itself? If the gifted homes that are as a result of these major planning decisions, are welcome, because obviously it means that the council can place residents into these council properties, and it alleviates the temporary accommodation costs, which are absolutely extortionate. And I feel that this council must be making every possible effort into looking at the council homes so that we can reduce that budget. And maybe there is a solution at Wheelie somewhere. I wonder where, but potentially there could be something in the offering there. I would urge the Cabinet to look at that. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, Councillor Honeywood, housing strategy. You're right, we did say something about this last year, and you're right to challenge it. It has been delayed, but I have on good authority that we'll be going to consultation in Q1, so in the next 3 months of so that'll be April, May, June, with it coming back to Cabinet for Q2. So hold me to that. and I'll hold somebody else to that. Councillor Harris, we've had the national insurance contribution. I think you've made that point earlier. You've just made it again. My answer remains the same. But as for, under-resourced staff at our housing, I think that was brought up at scrutiny that you were part of, and that's the job of scrutiny. We're now going to go away and have a look at that and see the reality of that situation. So thank you to the scrutiny for doing that job, and we'll be coming back to have a look at that. As for the homelessness, I think you've mistaken that for where it lies. That's a general fund thing, not a HRA thing. You're right, homelessness is an issue, and it's one of the biggest costs to this council. But it is one thing that we're always continually looking at. It's one of my highest priorities to keep driving that figure down, which is why we pushed Spendles through, and that's why it's now saving us £200,000. We're also looking at a strategy, and we're also looking at a deep dive into the HRA to understand how best we can get more for our residents. So thank you all for all your comments. Thank you.
As a vote? All those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Any urgent matters for debate? There are none. So I declare this meeting closed. And the next scheduled meeting is the 25th of March at 7:30, where we meet again. The time now is 8:46.
Please be upstanding.